After his resurrection from the dead, Jesus Christ began preparing his apostles and his other followers for his eventual ascension into heaven, the great event that we celebrate today with solemnity. And they were saddened by the prospect of his departure, but he told them that it is good for you that I go. Because if I do not go, and I'm paraphrasing by and large, I cannot send you the Holy Spirit. And what he was impressing upon his disciples was that his departure was not a departure, from his presence to us, but rather so that he might be more present to us by the power and the grace of the Holy Spirit dwelling within those who believe. That's the one reason that Jesus Christ gave, but the church also came to understand that there is another reason for his departure, is so that being removed from our sight as he passed into the sacraments, we might place our faith in his presence there, especially the sacrament of the Most Holy Eucharist, in which we believe that Jesus Christ is truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. And it's not a presence that we call spiritual. It is the one that the church has always declared and reaffirmed as being real. Christ is really and truly present in the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist. And so there is no contradiction that as he's preparing to ascend into heaven, among his final words to his disciples are, "Behold, I am with you always, to the end of the age." But there is also a further reason why it is good for the Lord to have ascended and be removed from our sight. It is so that as we gaze upon him leaving this earth and being taken up into heaven, all who came to know and love and follow him in this world might now have their faith and hope fixed on him where he is presently seated, at the right hand of the Father. So that we don't get so distracted by our pursuit of earthly joys and all the distractions of the pleasure and satisfaction to be found in this world, but at the end of the day to make sure that our desire for all joy, our desire for all happiness is found in heaven, where at the end of our life's pilgrimage we hope to follow and be with Jesus, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, forever. But there is one point I wanted to make this morning, and it has to do with the conversation between Christ and his apostles and his other followers before he left. He told them that when they received the Holy Spirit, they'd be vested with power from on high to become his witnesses. And I think that's a really, really important topic to land on and to understand. What does it mean to be a witness? And we're not talking about you saw a car accident and a police officer comes over with a pen and notepad and wants to know what you saw. You see, because those kinds of witnesses can be deceived by their senses, right? We know how easily we can be deceived by our senses. No, we're talking about a witness that goes much, much more deeper than that. And it has precisely everything to do with our friendship with Jesus Christ. Because what is the Catholic faith all about anyway, if we're going to have that conversation? I mean, you do find some people, and even Catholics themselves, who talk about the church with all the rules. Well, that's a very, I'm not even going to call it impoverished understanding of the church. That's not even in the ballpark. That's just silly. We live in a world filled with laws, and nobody complains about that. Well, they do, but we all live in a world filled with laws. We don't get fed up with the United States and move to a deserted island so we can do as we please. When it comes to the church, those rules. Well, you're missing the point, because you never met Jesus Christ risen from the dead. That's the point. You see, our faith is not simply about a body of doctrine, but it includes that. It is not simply about a moral code, but it includes that. It's not just about rituals and prayers and devotions, even though it includes all of those things. But at the end of the day, none of these things have any meaning if we do not know Jesus Christ, risen from the dead, and love him and enjoy his friendship. That's what we bear witness to. What is the Greek word for witness? You already know it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's martyr. The Greek word for witness is martyr. Now, I know that this is immediately going to conjure into your head images of people being beheaded, burned at the stake, and thrown to wild animals to be devoured. Well, that has nothing to do with what martyrdom is. Anybody can have their head chopped off, burned at the stake, or thrown to a wild animal to be devoured. Doesn't make them a martyr. It just makes them a desperately unfortunate human being, at bare minimum. What makes a martyr is what they were doing as they were sacrificing their lives. They were bearing witness to a hope that does not belong in an earthly joy, but is only found in a promise of Jesus Christ, whom they knew to be risen from the dead because of his Spirit dwelling within them, and fed on his body and blood in the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist every Sunday, and knew that in receiving that sacrament they too were given a promise and foretaste of life in heaven, and at the end of the world their bodies would be raised to the dead and glorified like Jesus Christ, patterned after his in glory. That's what they were doing. They were bearing witness. That witness was so powerful, people who would gather into the stadiums to see bloody spectacles were at least hoping somebody would put up a fight, that at least somebody would scream, but they were continually disappointed. And what they saw instead was serenity and joy. Serenity and joy that made people pause and say, who are these people? It led them to inquire and be catechized and baptized themselves in order to become like them. But the more the Christians were persecuted, the more blood was shed, the more Christians that were produced. Because the witness was that powerful, it was that clear. You see, and that's what Jesus Christ is asking for each and every one of us. To be his witness. I am not saying that you need to fear having your head chopped off, being burned at the stake, or thrown to a wild animal. Those are for whom it has been chosen. But the church has always recognized another kind of martyrdom that is distinguished from a martyrdom of blood. It is called a white martyrdom. And that white martyrdom consists in the sacrifice of our will in order to bring it into conformity with the will of God himself. So that we come to love what he loves, desire what he desires. And even without understanding the mysterious wisdom of his providence, we nonetheless accept it, knowing that God always does things in order to produce a good, even if we can't see it before our eyes. But we trust, we know it's there. It still is a painful martyrdom, according to our pride and self-love. Sacrifice my will? But it has nothing to do with sacrificing our freedom, but rather everything to do in order to lay hold of it, to become truly free. We're very slow to do penance on our own and to make little sacrifices. Lent rolls around and we might think of something we can do, but then on Easter Sunday morning, that's just cast to the wind, and then life goes on and we return to our same old habits. But God has a plan. If you don't want to make sacrifices and you don't want to do penances, well, then God will pick one for you. And he does. Each and every day, our life is filled with little trials and difficulties, contradictions, adversities, and suffering great and small. And what God is doing in these things, which are all mysteriously woven into the inscrutable wisdom of his providence, is to provide us with moments of clarity. Are we attached to the things of this world? Are we seeking joy in this life? Even though we know that everything in this world is passing away, we've seen it over and over and over again, even though we know that, we still cling to those little pleasures and satisfactions, instead of looking upward, where our faith and hope belong, in Jesus Christ. And so our witness is found in the way in which we respond to these things. How do we respond? And when we respond with love and gratitude for God providing us with these opportunities to prove our faith and hope and love for him, we're grateful. We're grateful. But then we can also kind of just step back from that in our own individual lives, but then we just, look at the world and its increasing hostility. The way we treat each other, the way we talk to each other. This hyper-politicized climate in which we live, which is desperately antithetical to the Christian faith. Desperately. But we look at how do we handle the hostility. We turn to Jesus Christ in his passion and death. And what did he exemplify for us? The virtues of patience, meekness, humility, charity. These are the virtues by which we give witness to our faith in Jesus Christ and a demonstration of our friendship with him. We all like the good teachings of Jesus Christ, the ones that we judge good. The ones we fail to meditate on and take to heart are forgive your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. If someone strikes your cheek, turn them the other cheek as well. If someone asks you for your cloak, give them your tunic as well. If someone wants you to go for a mile, go 2 miles. Forgive, or else you will not be forgiven. See, those are the ones that we find grossly distasteful, and those are precisely the ones through which we bear witness to our faith in Jesus Christ and our friendship with Him. He is charity itself. He is charity itself. He has shown us how we ought to deal with one another, how we ought to handle hostilities and adversities, how we ought to, face, and endure our daily trials and adversities and all of our suffering, great and small. He has shown us and given us an example. He is someone who has never asked us to do anything He is not willing to do Himself or has not done first. I think that's the overall point. You will receive power from on high, the Holy Spirit dwelling within you. And where the Holy Spirit is, there also is the Father and the Holy Son. An indivisible unity of 3 persons in one God that we bear within our heart, that we bear within our very soul. And it is there that we cultivate this friendship. It is there that we cultivate this love, this affection. And it is from there that we receive the grace to bear witness to the one we love and to the hope that we have.